Good morning. Good morning. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wellness Wednesday. I hope you're all having a fabulous day. If I sound a little hoarse, there's still a lot of pollen out there, y'all. So just bear with me if I sound a little weird today. In any case, if you are just stumbling on my page, my name is Donna. I'm a mom, a nana, a girlfriend. I am a jazzerciser, runner, line dancer. I love to be as active as possible. I am also, however, counterintuitively, a grad student studying for my Master of Science in Clinical Mental Health Counseling, which sometimes means I don't get as much activity as I want because I'm chained to the desk, and that's okay too. In any case, I started Wellness Wednesday because I have been in a lifelong journey with anxiety and depression. And in the process of that journey, I'm constantly, and my studies, of course, I'm constantly learning new things. And I have also, one of the most important things I've learned is that when we share with each other our journeys, our tips, our tricks, things that work for us, sometimes they work for other people too, and vice versa. Sometimes they don't, and that's okay. But sometimes we don't even know that there's other options out there if we're not talking about it. And especially during Mental Health Awareness Month, talking about wellness and sharing the things that work for us is super important, because you never know, even if it's something that you've heard 100 times before, you never know when just in that right moment that it's going to click and you're going to be like, oh, hey, maybe I need to try this. And so, like I said, not everything works for everybody. But when we share and we what's the word I'm looking for? Ooh, words might be hard today. When we harness pure wisdom, we're not only providing support for each other, but we are also, we're also learning from each other. And that's huge. And that might have sounded a little circular, but you get the idea. If you have been following me for a while, you know that based on that, sometimes I get a little repetitive. Sometimes you'll hear the same thing several times, not necessarily in the same episode, but over several episodes. And that's because sometimes we still need that repetition, even though we're not in kindergarten anymore. We learn best by repetition because we're humans. And again, sometimes it takes the 805th time to hear something before it clicks and we go, oh, hey, I understand that, or I feel that way too, or that might work for me. I tried that once and it did work. Why didn't I do it again? So there's a lot of reasons to do this, to share my journey with you, and in hopes that you will engage, drop comments, ask questions, and share your journey with us as well. So with that said, if you're here, let me know you're here. If you don't see this till afterwards, you can hit hashtag replay in the comments. You can still ask questions. Facebook keeps live videos up for 30 days. And then as soon as I'm done, I usually upload the video to YouTube as well. So it's always on my YouTube channel. But if I don't acknowledge you, it's because Facebook doesn't always show me all the things. So it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's just because I didn't see it. And I will usually respond after I'm done. In any case, thank you so much for being here this morning, if you are here. Last week, partly because of Mental Health Awareness Month, I talked about not waiting for a crisis to ask for help. And my challenge last week was to identify one area of your mental or emotional wellness that you've been minimizing or pushing through, kind of ignoring, and then ask yourself, what would support look like before I'm in crisis or before a crisis? And what would it look like to take myself seriously now instead of later? I'm looking at last week's notes. Or just have one honest conversation, even if it's just admitting I'm struggling more than I've been saying. So that was last week's challenge. If you did that, if it helped you, if it didn't help you, let me know, send me a message, drop a comment. I'd love to hear how that went for you. So, this week I wanted to stay in a similar lane because locally my community has seen a fair amount of loss. And we've lost several pillars of the community in the last few weeks. For me, I read the stories, that the newspaper publishes, and I know the people, and I see the social media posts, and I think, I wish I knew how to help. because I want so badly when things like this are going on to help. And I have to wonder how many of you have had the same struggle, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that is just at a loss of what to do when we have all these feelings. Good morning, Miss Heather. When we have all these feelings for these people that we know have suffered loss, and we don't know where to start. We want to help them and we don't even know how. And it feels heavy, right? Let me know if you think that feels heavy, because I know it did for me. In fact, I had a couple of topics lined up for this week and next week. And then because of my school studies currently and a celebration of life that we attended on Monday night, I was struggling. I was struggling to even want to do Wellness Wednesday this week. And it wasn't because I didn't want to do it. It's because the topics I was looking at weren't aligning with what was going on right now. And I could feel that. And then once I landed on this topic, I felt so much better. And I felt more purpose for this week. And that's what Wellness Wednesday has been, as a purpose for me. So I feel like this is something that people besides just me, good morning, Danielle, need today. So again, it feels heavy when we see all this loss going on around us, when we have a friend who's suffering through a really hard time and we just don't know how to help. Inherently, most of us want to fix, right? We want to help, we want to fix, we want to make it better. That's kind of a mama bear thing in us. And sometimes we can't fix it. Sometimes we just can't fix it. But today, excuse me, I want to talk about how we can support others that are going through hard things, not with fixes and not with perfect words, but just by showing up in ways that matter, because so many of us care so deeply, but we're uncomfortable and we're unsure and we're afraid of doing the wrong thing, right? So, why this topic today? Well, I kind of alluded to that a little bit. My local community, and if you're watching, you may not be local, but my local community has lost several people that were highly regarded in the community in the last few weeks. I think we went to a service Monday night, and I think there was a service for another one of them last night, and there's one upcoming. Good morning, Miss Patricia. So, in addition to that, I have been working on a fake school client. I'm in an addictions counseling. And this particular fake, I don't like the word fake, but I don't have a better one right now. This particular fake client that I'm working with suffered a terrible car accident right around her graduation, where she not only lost what the next year or so of her life was supposed to look like, which can be a grief all in of itself, but she also lost a friend. And so she questions why she survived the accident and her friend did not. So it's a whole layered case, and I won't go into any more detail than that. But obviously, loss is a huge theme right now in my world. So the bottom line is that so many people are quietly carrying heavy things, like grief. And grief doesn't always look like, and I talked about grief about not quite a year ago, and I'll drop that video in the comments. Grief isn't always over the loss of the death of a loved one. Sometimes grief is over the loss of the way something looked like it was going to be, or a relationship, or it can come into play in a lot of different ways. But a lot of people are quietly carrying heavy things. They're carrying some type of grief, or they're caregiving for someone else, and it's heavy because they want to fix and they can't fix, and they're doing the best they can. Or they're carrying illness that nobody else sees, or maybe everybody else does see. They're carrying mental health struggles, family crises, burnout, financial stress, addiction and recovery, loss, transition, all of these things. We never know what someone else is carrying, because a lot of people do it very silently and very quietly. And so when we have people that are close to us, or just people that we know well, that are going through this, we assume they want space, and that we don't, or that, there's a couple of people that we lost in the community. I knew of them. met them a couple times. I know their family members, but I didn't know them. So then we get that we don't feel like we knew them well enough to reach out. Or if they're suffering a loss and we know that they are, we don't feel like we know them well enough to reach out and offer support. Or we think that somebody else has it handled, or that will make it awkward. And these are all things I've personally experienced in the last couple of weeks, and also during other times when we've had huge catastrophic loss after hurricanes and things like that. So I feel confident that somewhere inside of us, we've all experienced this wanting to help, but not knowing where to start, and maybe sometimes even being a little frozen by it because we don't want to make things awkward. We don't want to intrude. But because of that, people who are carrying heavy things can sometimes end up feeling isolated when they really need connection the most, if that makes sense. So why do we struggle with this? We struggle with it because it's usually more about us than about them. And we don't like to hear that because we have these big, huge hearts and we want to pour them into somebody else. So we don't like hearing that not feeling like we can do that is more about us than about them. And when we struggle to help, it's usually because we're uncomfortable around pain and grief. I mean, who isn't? Who's not uncomfortable around pain and grief? I know I am. I know I avoid funerals and services like the plague if I can, because usually I'm a sniveling idiot from the time I hit the door till the time I leave. Because when I see someone else grieving, I begin to grieve with them. It's just kind of an automatic response for me. And so we're uncomfortable around pain and grief. And we're afraid we're going to say the wrong thing. We rush to try to fix it because we feel so helpless about it. And sometimes there's an all or nothing approach. Like if we can't just fix it and make it better, we can't. You know what I mean? And that's difficult too. And then we compare. We compare because others are closer to them. So they need to hear from them more than from us. Or we don't know what to do, or we don't want to bother them. And sometimes we just disappear because we don't know how to face their pain. So that's that being uncomfortable around pain and grief. So what happens, as I said, you heard all of that. You know, I'm uncomfortable. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. I want to fix it and I can't, so I don't know what to do. So-and-so is closer to them than me, so I can't reach out to them. They've got it covered. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to intrude. You hear the I in all of those things. And that's what I mean when I say one of the reasons we struggle to help is because is not really about that person or what they're experiencing, but more about us and our reaction to it. And that's it. It's the truth, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a human thing. So I'm certainly not, having felt this way many times, I'm certainly not here to shame anybody, but more to give it life and help us recognize that this is a huge internal struggle that a lot of times we experience. And there's things that don't help. There's things that absolutely never help, but that we're kind of conditioned to do because we've heard other people do it, and that's just what's always been done. And that's forcing positivity. It's going to be okay. You're going to get through this. Comparing losses, you know, I lost a loved one, or I lost a job, and that's not necessarily a bad thing either. A lot of times we think we're helping by showing them that we understand how they feel, and it doesn't always come across that way. So we again, disappearing out of awkwardness, where we just don't, you know, maybe we see that person somewhere and then we don't really look them in the eye, and we don't engage with them because we're afraid we're going to do something weird. And then they're just like, that person used to talk to me all the time. What's going on? Or minimizing their pain or rushing them to move on. Everybody's grieving process is extremely, extremely different. And people just really cannot be, there's not a timeline. There's just not a timeline. Every loss is different. Everybody's threshold is different, and everybody grieves differently. So sometimes being supportive is just being willing to sit next to them. I know there's a few memes that go around, and I think one is Winnie the Pooh related. about just sitting next to someone and not necessarily trying to fix or distract them, although sometimes for some people distraction helps, or erase what's happened, but just being willing to sit with them in the quiet and just be there. So most often what people need, or what usually helps, is we need to know that they don't expect us to solve their pain. In fact, most of the time they probably think that we can't. But they will remember who checked in. They will remember who stayed. And they will remember who listened and who consistently showed kindness. They will not remember your perfect words. They will remember that you showed up. The service that we went to on Monday night, I believe that the mother saw me. I don't know if it registered. I don't know if it was even on her radar that I was there. And that didn't matter. And I didn't get to her to say goodbye when we left. But I felt like I was doing something by being there. Again, there's that I again. That's more for us. And I hope that at some point when she sees me somewhere, that she's going to remember that I was there and that I showed up. And that it helps her in some way. When she's mulling over in her head the community members that were there to show their support. I hope I'm on the list. I hope she remembers that. But this looks like a lot of things. This can look like a lot of things. This can look like a text, a call. Sometimes when I see that people have experienced lost friends of mine on Facebook, I don't know what to say. So a lot of times I will just send them a heart and Facebook Messenger once I've seen a post about it, just to kind of let them know that I'm thinking about them. So again, this can look like this kind of support, the kind of support that people really need can look like a text, a phone call, sitting with them, remembering their loved one's birthday a year later. So remembering important dates, or if somebody has suffered a loss because of an illness and then they reached a point of remission or recovery, and they've posted about it or announced it somewhere, remembering that date, so that you can reach out and say, hey, and I know memories are hard right now. So sometimes we have to make notes in our phones, put them on our calendar, whatever, and that's okay. But remembering a date that should be celebrated, those kinds of things are extremely supportive, and people will appreciate that you remembered something that far down the road. Helping to drop off food or shop for food or do their errands. Sometimes the simplest of errands can be extremely overwhelming when someone is going through a hard time. A non-rushed conversation. A lot of times in my world, we do a lot of mixers, we do a lot of networking stuff, and sometimes the conversations feel rushed because people are coming in and out, and they're people we haven't seen in a while. So we're trying to say hello to all the people as quickly as we can. And then there's lots of noise in the background, so it's hard to have a real conversation. So this is when conversations that don't feel rushed, where we can try to be present and focused on the person in front of us, can become really, really valuable. And checking in after the attention fades, because a lot of times when people are going through a hard time, or especially experiencing the loss of a loved one, a lot of times there's a ton of family and a ton of help and a ton of support for that first few weeks, and then all of a sudden one day everybody's gone and that person finds themselves by themselves. And that's sometimes when they need support the most. So checking in on them after the attention fades, after the appearance of the hard time is over, it is sometimes one of the most meaningful things that you can do to support. And it's okay to just be like, hey, I'm here for you. That's totally okay. In fact, that's one of the best things you can do. I'm here if you need me. I'm thinking about you. I'm here if you need me. In small communities especially, loss is often felt on a community level. And if we don't know them personally, we usually know someone who has been directly impacted by them, or we've been part of something that's been directly impacted by them. And that's where a lot of that disconnect that I talked about comes in, where we're like, we don't know them well enough. We don't know what to do. We feel awkward. We see them in public, but we don't really know what the right thing to say is. So maybe we're really awkward or we seem distant. And it's not, again, it's not because we don't want to help. It's because we just don't know what to do. And because at the core of it, we want to fix it and we can't. It's not ours to fix. So community support also matters more than people realize. When you're in that situation, whether it's somebody very close to you or somebody that you know who has lost someone or is grieving something, a circumstance, a person, whatever the case may be, a thoughtful card or a comment on their post, a prayer. That's a huge thing for me when I don't know what to do about anything. When I don't know what to do about anything, I pray. I try to pray first, and I'm getting better at that. So that's one of the things that I feel is one of the most important things I can do. And of course, that depends on your beliefs, is to put those people in my prayers, to pray for their peace, to pray for their comfort, and their healing, whatever that looks like for them. People a lot of times do meal trains. Sometimes people don't do meal trains, but you can have food delivered, especially if it's food that is easy to eat as leftovers or reheat or stick in the freezer or whatever. Again, a check-in or dropping off a meal or whatever, a lot of times carries more weight than we might think. When someone is overwhelmed and doesn't know, especially if they have family at home and they're overwhelmed and they don't know what to do. They can't make simple decisions like what to cook for dinner. Sometimes having that provision makes all the difference. It takes that weight off. Basically showing up. There are lots of ways that we can show up. If it's somebody you know and you feel comfortable that it's acceptable for you to be present at their service, that is a great way to show up, because even if they don't see you, even if you don't talk to them, interact with them, depending on what their grief experience is during the service, signing in on the book, when they go back over it that later, they'll be like, oh, I didn't see them, but I'm so thankful they were here. Again, showing up sometimes just makes all the difference. And that can look like a text or a comment or a prayer or a card. But it matters more than most of us realize, even on a community level. And boundaries matter too. This does not mean that we destroy ourselves emotionally, or try to carry someone else's pain. And some of us, and I've been known to do that. We become so entrenched in how this other person must be feeling that we can't even function ourselves. So we have to draw boundaries there. Those matter as well. And sometimes helping someone else just means connecting them to resources, or helping to connect them to resources like grief support groups or, other types of support groups like the ones that NAMI offers. And again, it's all relevant depending on what they're experiencing. But sometimes resources, you could reach out and say, hey, just let me know if you need anything. And don't forget, I am part of this organization or whatever if you need information about some resources. And just leaving it there. It doesn't even always require a response. And sometimes it may be weeks, even months before somebody responds, because especially with social media, when they're experiencing a loss, there's tons of messages and there's tons of texts and there's tons of phone calls. And so just leaving something there without the expectation of a response can sometimes make a huge difference. And this is a heavy topic, and I'm trying not to dig into it too heavily. But it's also a very, very important one. Especially since we are discussing Mental Health Awareness Month, and we did just talk about not needing a crisis to seek help, to seek support. So my challenge to you this week, based on this, would be to think about who helped you during a hard time and why did it matter? And sometimes when we think back, it's the little things that we're like, oh, hey, think about a time that you were helped during a hard time. And why it mattered so much, something that stuck to you that somebody did or said, or a message you received that you didn't expect. And then take that and reach out to somebody else that's going through a hard time and do something similar for them. I'm pretty sure that if we think about it for a hot minute, we all know somebody that's going through a difficult time right now. So my challenge to you would be to think back to a time when you were, and something that somebody did or said, or a card you received or something like that, that really stuck with you. And then take that idea, that concept, and reach out to someone else, and let them know that they're not alone, because sometimes that's the most important thing. And that's my challenge to you this week. If you did last week's challenge, if you do this week's, come back, send me a message, drop a comment, whatever. Let me know if you did it. Let me know if it worked for you. And as I wrap up, just remember these things. Again, we all have these big, most of us, I mean, we were made with these big, huge, giant hearts, and we want to love others, and we want to help others. And a lot of the time we want to fix whatever's happening to make others feel better. And we can't always do that, but there are a lot of ways that we can support them while they work through the process. Presence matters more than perfection. Always. And most of the time people don't need fixing. We don't need fixing. They don't need fixing. We need connection. We need connection and we need support, right? And sometimes the most powerful words that we can say are not, it's going to be okay, it's going to be better. It's I'm here. I'm here if you need me. I'm here to help. What can I do for you? So I hope that was helpful for you today. It's a little bit shorter, really not much, but and a little bit different topic. I usually try to keep things light, but this has definitely been a theme for the last week. And I often feel like if I'm feeling something heavy, maybe others are too. And that's one of the reasons why we do Wellness Wednesday, to kind of share that information and kind of help each other and support each other, even when things can't be fixed, right? So if you found this helpful, please share, because somebody else may be carrying something heavy and not speaking about it, or somebody else may not be sure about how to help someone that's carrying something heavy and and maybe this will help them. So if it was helpful to you, please share. It'll be up on my YouTube channel within the hour. I hope that if you work on this challenge, that you find something useful that you can use to support someone else. In any case, in the meantime, between now and next week, I hope you all have a great week and be well.